Hello, thank you for viewing. This will be the first part of the source code walkthrough. Over here we will take a look at how we are actually loading into the multiplayer scene. So we'll take a look at how this is being controlled. The first thing we need to take a look at is over here. This is the starting game now text as well as connecting to server text. Now how is this handled? First of all, if you take a look at this game object, you'll find that it has a few buttons inside, as well as the starting the game text, win text, losses text, which basically holds or tells the player how many wins or losses he or she has. This is the starting the game text, which basically means that this is going to tell the player that the game is starting. This is the UI which is shown when the player is offline. This is the UI to tell the player to begin the game, and this is the UI for the cancel option which the player has. We have two scripts here. Well, we actually have more than two scripts here, but let me go ahead and take a look at these two scripts, which are extremely important. The another thing that we have is the lobby controller, and we have the Photon room script. So we have two scripts. We also have a multiplayer settings script here. We also have a main camera, and over here we are handling the win-loss. We are also handling the starting resolution of the game. Then we have a directional light, and this is basically what we have. So I'll first of all open up the lobby controller and the room controller and the multiplayer settings. So we have all of these. I'm going to click this and open it in Visual Studio. And this, to tell you again, this video will cover how we are actually loading into the multiplayer scene, and after that, once we load into the multiplayer scene, I'll tell how everything is working. So here we have got the Photon room script. I'll also open the lobby controller, and I'll also open the multiplayer settings. So we have these scripts. Over here I'm going to take the Photon lobby script and I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to take the, let me just find it, the Photon room script. I'm going to put it over here, and if there is any other player setup script and loss face handler. Okay, so this is what we have. We'll first take a look at the Photon lobby script, which is basically handling, this script handles the lobby of the game. It is required to either join a room or create one. So this is what the script is doing. Over here we have got a Photon lobby singleton. Then we have got the game object battle button, cancel button, and we also have the starting game text, which are the game objects over here. Then we have got the, in the start we are basically trying to connect to the Photon server, which is the Photon PUN. The package contains all of the functions required to connect to the official Photon servers. This is the statement to connect to the Photon server. Then we have the on button clicked for the battle button. Over here we will be printing in the console that we are searching for a room. Then we are going to disable the battle button, and we are going to enable the cancel button. Over here we are going to display searching for players and photon network.join random room, which basically means we're telling the game to, well, just join a random room. We are also handling the cancel button over here, so it will just stop the search. That's all it's doing, and we'll also leave the room. This function is called when we have connected to the master server, which basically means when we are trying to connect over here. Once we have connected, this function will be called automatically. This is part of the mono behavior PUN callbacks. So once we are overriding this function, we will also change the text over here, which is ready to search. So first it was in the start we didn't have anything over here. Like there's nothing over here starting the game .text, and we have nothing over here, but as soon as we connect it says ready to search, which is the reason why you see ready to search as soon as you join, as soon as you connect to the master server or the Photon server. So we have got some conditions here, or we have got some callbacks here. In fact, we have got on join room fail. So this is just for debugging that if we don't have a room, we'll create one. And this is the function to create the room, which is void create room. Over here we have got room options, which is a very standard function to create a very standard statement, in fact, to create the room for the Photon players or the Photon multiplayer. And we are creating a room, giving it a random number, and we are also passing in the room options variable here. The room options variable actually tells what kind of a room it is, so this shouldn't really this shouldn't be touched. It should be left as it is. We also have the callback to handle on join roomed, and we also have a callback to for the on create room failed function, which basically calls the create room function again. So we'll keep on trying to create a room until we actually end up creating a room. So it's kind of like an infinite loop until we create a room. Once we're in a room, this is the function that is required to actually start handling all of the functions once the player is in the room. So the first thing that we have is we have all of these variables. The first variable we have is the photon room variable. Then we've got the photon view variable. This particular variable is required so that we can actually synchronize the player or the script across the network. Over here we are actually going to be using it to synchronize the players that are in the room. So all of the room will be synchronized and all of the players will be added into the room. If you don't have this, we will not be able to. Over here we've got some booleans. We've got the current scene variable, multiplayer scene variable over here, the integers for that. Please do note that we also need a singleton, which we have over here. Then we have got the player info region, which is basically just the photon players. We have got the player variable over here, and we have got players in room, my number in room, which are required to make the room properly function. Then we have got player in game, so this will tell how many players we have in game. Then we have a few variables over here which are basically to start the game. This is the ready to count, ready to start, starting time. These are all timer variables to to keep things short and simple. These can be actually customized so that if you customize them, you'll be able to reduce the loading time. So right now I believe it's 6 seconds. So if you have the variable starting time, if you have it lowered, then you would actually be I believe it's the starting time, or it is the time to start the time once again. Okay, so it's time to start. Time to start I believe is 6 right now. If you change it to 3, that means the players, once the room is filled, will load into the multiplayer scene in 3 seconds. So that's what it is. Okay, so we have got a few callbacks here, and this is using the in room callbacks. So we have got the photons on enable function, which basically means once this is on enable, we'll just add a callback to target. So this says that putting this object to the add callback to make sure that it's part of it. So we are making sure that this particular object is a part of the photon network add callback target. So we need this. Then we have got a few we have got a variable to handle the loading scene, which is required because once the scene is loaded, we need to synchronize all players. So this is required. This should not really be touched. Okay, we have got the on disable function, so we are basically going to remove that. We are basically doing the opposite of on enable here. We've got the wake function where we are actually assigning the singleton, and we are also destroying this game object if it does not belong to the we have to destroy this game object if it is not the local player. So we want to see if it is already designated. If it's not designated, then we have to make sure that it's designated, it's initialized, and that the if it does not belong to the local player, we have to destroy it and then assign it again. This is very important. Okay, so other than that, we also have the start, where we are actually assigning a few variables again, and you can see that the at max players is equal to 6, and time to start is equal to starting time. We assign starting time in the inspector. And if you want to take a look at it, I'll show it to you. So we've got the Photon room script, which is over here, and we've got the starting time set to 3, which basically means that's wrong. It's actually set to 3. It's not 6, so it's 3. So other than that, you have the at max players, which is a 6. So we've got time to start, which is equal to starting time, which was assigned in the inspector. So here we've got a few statements which are actually handling what kind of a start we want. We are actually looking, we have developed this game so it's a delay start, so that's the reason why when it says player found, these are the functions that run. So the comments will be able to tell you how everything is working. So this is how it's working. And I'm just looking for something important here. This function is important because it'll restart the timer if one of the players leave. So remember that if the players in room is greater than 1, that means if 2 players are in the room, we have to if there is just 1 player in the room, we'll restart the timer. And these are the functions that run when the game is not loaded. So we have ready to start here, and we have all of these statements here, which are basically handling if the game is ready to start. So this is what actually helps the game run, or helps the game load once a particular number of players have entered the room. So all of these are just checks, so we make sure that the game is loaded properly, and we load properly into the multiplayer scenes. Now this should not be touched. Okay, this should be as it is. This is the start game function, which basically loads all players into the multiplayer scene. So photon network.load level, this is what we're calling. Okay. So here we've got the restart timer function, which will basically restart timer as soon as a player leaves the room, and there's only 1 player in the room. Over here we are creating the player, and this is going to instantiate the player. This is where we are creating the player. This is an on-scene finish loading callback, which will basically be actually synchronizing a Photon player across the network. So that's the reason why 2 players can control the game on their client, because of this particular function, because we are actually synchronizing all players that were created across the network here. Over here we've got onJoin room function again, which is going to actually be called once the player joins a room, and these are all of the update functions, not the update functions, but the Photon room update functions, which basically updates the player list. It updates the player Photon players.length array. It also updates the number of the player that joined the room. These are standard functions. Again, these do not need to be touched. They are working fine. These don't need to be touched, and this is true for these particular functions are like standard for all delay start multiplayer games. Okay. This is the onPlayer enter room function, which is basically going to handle when the player enters a room. And we've got some PUN callbacks. Sorry, not PUN callbacks. It is the RPC functions, the PUN RPC functions, which is the remote protocol functions. This is for the loaded game scene, which basically means that all of the when a player joins the room, this is the function that is called. So let me just take a look at where this is called. Okay, so this is passed as a string, so it should be here somewhere, and let me just find it for you. Yeah, there it is. So on finish on scene finish loading, this is the RPC function that is called to make sure that each and every one of the players is synchronized across the network. So over here we've got RPC create player, which is again an RPC to create the player on all clients across the network. We've got a multiplayer settings script here, which is basically doing very simple functions which are for the delay start, max players, menu scene, multiplayer scene. This is just for telling the local client what the multiplayer scene is, where it is, and whether this local client is actually going to delay start or whether it's going to quick start. We don't have quick start functions at the moment because this game was designed to be a delay start game. You will need to go through the script to understand it better because all of it's interconnected. This doesn't need to be touched though. The only thing that can be touched is the time to start. All these variables can be touched, but then again, probably the only variables that you'll ever need to touch in the future is the time to start variable to just simply start the game faster. That's basically it. Other than that, these are very standard statements. We just had to customize it a bit so that we can actually load the game the way we want to load it, and not as an FPS or any kind of single player game like a standard single player game, because our requirements were different.